ADDICTS. Like, hey, Scoob, did you hear Nikki Blake is hosting a Scooby-Doo panel? No. Yeah. Like on today's Scooby-Doo episode, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy meet Nikki Blake. Yeah, in a Scooby Panel. Like, we need to get this puppy started. Okay, Nikki Blake, take it away, Scooby-Doo.
Welcome to the Scooby Panel. I'm Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com, and today we will be talking about Shaggy. Before we begin, I'd like to have everybody introduce themselves, and Wendy, we'll start with you.
Hey everybody, I'm Wendy BRYDGE. I'm a commissioned artist. I've been collecting Scooby for 30 years, and tonight I have a proud little co-host of my own right here, my little Scrappy Doo. So everyone enjoy, please.
Joel.
Hey there, I am Joel from the YouTube channel Planet Scooby.
DANII.
Hi, I'm DANII MEGER. I'm the current Guinness World Record holder for biggest collection of Scooby-Doo memorabilia, and I'm a collecting expert and a voice actor, and I love Shaggy. He's my favorite.
I knew that, and that's why I knew you had to be on this panel. Cameron.
Hey y'all, I'm Cameron from Scooby-Doo Cameron Too. I'm a big Scooby-Doo collector and a lifelong fan, and I'm just happy to be here. And I've got my statue of Shaggy behind me that's faceless, so that's not creepy enough. I don't know what it is.
That is a little bit creepy.
It is a little bit creepy.
All right, so we're going to start with Shaggy's origin, and we're just going to talk about some information that we know about Shaggy. So we know his full name is Norville Shaggy Rogers. He is 17 years old. He's 6 feet tall, 160 pounds. His hair is brown. His catchphrase is zoinks, but he does say like a lot. So, I mean, that could kind of be in there too. His favorite sandwich is a double, triple decker sardine and marshmallow fudge sandwich with a green olive on top. His favorite snack is chocolate-covered corn on the cob. And Daphne made him Shaggy Snacks, which was pot pie with a pizza crust, anchovies, pepperoni, and cherries in a thick chocolate sauce. That does not sound appetizing.
No.
Regarding his name, in an interview that I did with Joe Ruby and Ken Spears, they said there wasn't a story behind Shaggy, only that Shaggy, the name Shaggy, came first. Then we came up with his formal name. We kicked around a lot of names and just decided which ones seemed to fit their personalities best. We know that Shaggy was modeled after Maynard G. Krebs, who was played by Bob Denver on The Many Lives of Dobie Gillis. But we also learned from Burnett Griffey in Scooby Panel 25 that he was modeled after the stockroom guy at Hanna-Barbera, and that he actually wore bell bottoms, which is pretty cool. According to Those Meddling Kids, Shaggy's nickname was Buzz until his 10th birthday. And in that same special, we learned that he gave up eating Scooby snacks and started a belt buckle collection, that he has the largest collection in the world at 653, and he wears a different one for each mystery. But no one can see it because his shirt is so long. We learned that he was in track. He was the swingingest gymnast, and that his first toy was a garbage disposal. And that he's also a ventriloquist. And here's a fun fact. Besides Scooby-Doo, Shaggy is the only other character to appear in every episode and movie in the Scooby-Doo franchise. So let's talk about Shaggy and his origins. DANII, do you have anything else that I didn't mention about Shaggy? I mean, there's 50 some years of stuff. There's a lot.
I think one of my favorites is that he's like a mini golf champion. That always made me so excited because I love mini golf. And that comes up in What's New Scooby-Doo, and I just like, I don't know why it stuck with me, but I think especially the fact that he's so serious in that episode because he cares about mini golfing so much. like really shows like his entire character, because he's scared, but he's also skilled at something and knowledgeable, and he does know how to solve mysteries. He does help the gang solve mysteries. So like there's just like so much appreciation. Also his outfit was very cute. That like that doesn't matter, but I appreciated it a lot. So I was like, that was one thing. I was like, you're asking me about Shaggy, I need to talk about the mini golf. It's very important. I also really loved him and his family and pup named Scooby-Doo. I think it's just like really cute, and like how his dad talks and everything and talks to him, and like Norville, your mom would have a cow. I don't know why that's like so good, but just wholesome, so wholesome.
Wendy, what are your thoughts on Shaggy's origin?
Let's also not forget that Shaggy must have, I mean, well, obviously, okay, let me rephrase this. I love how we have the one side of Shaggy where he's always eating a lot, but he's so skinny. But the show multiple times has given us a very good reason for that. You know, like he was in track, he was a gymnast. Obviously, he is physically active, but also in Ghoul School, let's not forget that the whole reason he's at the school is to be the new gym teacher. And so I always thought that that was just like a nice little continued nod to the fact that, you know, yeah, Shaggy eats a lot, but he's so active. Let's not forget running away from ghosts like every day of his life too, because him and Scooby are always the bait, so they're always running and stuff. But I love how many hats he kind of wears in the movies like Ghoul School, and I can never get the image of them like doing dance out of my mind, and then they put the tutus on and everything, and like Shaggy's good at everything though, everything that he's doing, like, and he can cook. I mean, obviously there are certain things that he is eating that are questionable. Some of us know from experience how questionable those things are. But there are plenty of times too, especially in later iterations of Scooby-Doo, where Shaggy seems like a very competent chef. He knows how to cook. And you figure that since he is eternally a teenager, he's pretty talented for a teen. You know, for 17 years old, Shaggy can do a lot of things. And I think that that's a really good testament to that character on the show, that he's not just like the guy that's dressed like a hippie or whatever, and he's not just the guy who's scared all the time. It's like, no, Shaggy is a very talented young man who also is very responsible and resourceful, and when he needs to be, he can be very brave. Yeah, he maybe needs a little bit of a nudge to get there, but you know what? All that matters is that you get there in the end and you save the day, and I feel like with Scooby by his side, Shaggy always manages to do that.
Joel, what are your thoughts on Shaggy's origin?
I want to say, but I'd be lying, that he's a master of disguise. And he is in a way. Give him like a tablecloth and maybe a fur coat and he can become anything, a barber. But the charade is always up after a minute or two, so he's not necessarily a master. But he's young, he's 17, he'll get there. And an impressionist too. He can impersonate anyone, anything. And I did have a question though. I need someone to explain it to me because I'm not that smart. The joke about his first toy being a garbage disposal, I don't get it because, well, garbage disposals aren't that popular where I live. I've never really seen one, but I assume they're for like putting food down the sink or something. But with Shaggy, he eats everything. Like, I don't see him wasting any food at all. So I kind of don't get that joke, but I kind of just wrote it off as like a 70s joke. But if anyone can explain that to me, please do.
I think the joke is that he's the garbage disposal.
Yeah, I was about to say,
That's
like
what
a
I think that's what
symbolism.
the joke
Yeah.
is. I think so.
That's what I took it as, but she said his first toy. But yeah, no, that makes sense.
Because that's how they explained it in the episode. That was his. I think Velma said something about him having an iron stomach.
Yeah.
And then he said, well, my first toy was a garbage disposal.
Okay.
So
that's what I thought, but yeah, I just
It's a
needed.
sarcastic joke.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really get sarcasm half the time.
Cam, what are your thoughts on Shaggy's origin?
You know, everything that everyone has said, I absolutely love. And one thing I love about Shaggy is I feel that he's a leader. And I feel like they're all leaders. I know Fred is the leader of Mystery Incorporated, but I love how Shaggy just kind of continues on no matter what. Like, you know, when Fred goes to camp and Velma goes off to, you know, to the space program, you know, he's still driving the mystery machine around with Scooby and Scrappy, going and solving all those mysteries. You know, I love his style. You know, he always keeps that green no matter what. I mean, he has a green Jeep in the Boo Brothers. You know, I mean, he's racing cars with, and he had a girlfriend, you know, in The Reluctant Werewolf. But, you know, no matter what, whether it was, you know, the cartoon version or the live action, he always stayed true to himself, and he always pushed Scooby-Doo to be better. And I know later on during this panel, we're going to talk more about their friendship, but I don't know. I love how no matter what, he always does the right thing. Now, I know when you watch the classic vintage cartoons or even just the modern day cartoons with him in it, you know, he's always the first to, you know, to run. But, you know, then he stops and realizes, you know, I mean, because you've seen in some episodes where he stops, he's like, Scoob, the girls may be in trouble. We got to, you know, we really got to find our confidence to go back and, you know, try to save them. So I love the role he fills, you know, and I also loved all of his, you know, his love interest through his life and stuff like that. And no matter what he's taken on, he always stays true to Mystery Incorporated. And I know this isn't the cartoon scene that I'm going to be telling you all about, but I love in the first live action movie how when the gang splits up, he stays right there with Scooby, and he said, no, I forget what he says, but he said, Scooby, you know, friends don't break up. And he stays there with Scooby in the mystery machine, and he kind of holds it together. You know what I mean? That's Shaggy, you know? So Shaggy has a lot of heart. He's, you know, he's one of my favorite characters. But, you know, like I said, I mean, he's a master of everything. And I think Joel hit it, but master of disguises. I mean, he can throw together something like that, whether it's a sandwich, whether it's a costume to hide from a ghost or trick a ghost. And so that's always been fun. And it's like you said in the very beginning, Nikki, you know, he's been in like almost everything Scooby-Doo, you know, so that just shows you can't break out Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. You have to have Shaggy with Scooby-Doo. You can, I mean, don't get me wrong, we've had some iterations where Fred's been away and Velma's been away, and sometimes Daphne's been away, but Shaggy's always been there for Scooby-Doo. So it's very commendable.
It would be really weird to have something without Shaggy or without Scooby. They just seem to go together. Like they're a great duo. So you almost need them both.
Just riots over. I'm out there.
So we're going to talk about the evolution of Shaggy. So basically what I wrote down is the clothes that he wore. They changed a little bit. You know, he's known for the green shirt and the brown or maroon pants. But in Reluctant Werewolf, Boo Brothers, and 13 Ghosts, he wore the red shirt and the blue pants. In A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, he wore a green shirt and blue pants. And then in Get a Clue, he wore the white shirt with the green sleeves and the green stripe and khaki pants. But I like, to me, I think that his character has pretty much stayed true through all of the iterations. Joel, what do you think about the evolution of Shaggy?
I would agree. One thing with the evolution would be like the first 10 years, it's all 5 of them. And then I think over time he gained more and more popularity. Kids maybe wanted to see more of Shaggy. So it became more focused on Scooby and Shaggy for most of the 80s, I'd say. But other than that, yeah, he's pretty tried and true.
Cameron, what are your thoughts on the evolution of Shaggy?
I love the evolution. I love how we get a pup named Scooby-Doo, and it really talks about their childhood days and kind of how they grew up a little bit. And I appreciate whatever series or movie, we kind of get little backstories, you know, and little things that kind of connect their childhood to, you know, their teenage days, which I love. And I know it's just the changing color of a shirt, but I love red shirt Shaggy. Not only wrong, green shirt's my favorite, but I love when he pops the red shirt out. He can make it work. And it's funny too, because no matter what, whether they're, I think my favorite Shaggy outfit of all time is when they're doing that episode from the Scooby-Doo Where Are You? That Snow Ghost, where he's got the winter outfit on and it's all green. And no matter what winter episode, whether, throughout the series or movies in the long running of Scooby-Doo, he always kind of keeps that style going along. So I love it. And I think that's, we've talked about that before in previous panels. I love how Mystery Incorporated always keeps their styles. It's iconic. And I've heard people say, oh, they need to change them. No, they don't. They're fine just the way they are. They look great. And I love how Shaggy's color's always been green. But I think it's cool Hanna-Barbera kind of switched it up a little bit and gave him a red shirt. And I don't know why, but fans go crazy when red shirt Shaggy pops up. And it's just a changing color of a shirt. But it's just so grand and we all love it.
Danny, what are your thoughts on the evolution of Shaggy?
I think the interesting thing is how Shaggy has like a silhouette where you can change those things, like the winter outfit, like when he was in the mini golf outfit, or when they do like all their different stuff, there's that Shaggy silhouette which is so distinct. It doesn't matter if you put him in khakis or put him in jeans. Like Red Shirt Shaggy has jeans, and I feel like a lot of people forget like his pants and his shoes are different too, because like it's so distinct that he's changed from the green. But still, that silhouette of the baggy shirt and the baggy pants is like always there, and you can play around with it, but it'll always be like linked to Shaggy. And that's kind of like my favorite part, that Shaggy's so distinct as a character that he's unmistakable. You know who it is. Just like Scooby's unmistakable, Shaggy's right there with him. And I think that's why, like people specifically like latched on to the idea of Shaggy, is just he's so real and so distinct.
Wendy, what are your thoughts on the evolution of Shaggy?
I think that throughout the classic series, we actually get to see Shaggy mature. Because Cam brought up a good point earlier, saying that each member of the gang kind of has leadership qualities, that any of them could be a leader. It's not like just Fred or just Velma or just Daphne or whatever. Any of them can. And I kind of feel like in Where Are You, in my opinion anyway, I feel like Fred and Velma are kind of co-brains of the operation. Freddie kind of takes charge, but Velma's sort of right there with him because she's usually the one putting the clues together. And I think that in a way, Daphne, Shaggy, and Scooby are more in like a supporting role in Scooby-Doo Where Are You? But then we advance a decade or so, and 2 decades, and we get Shaggy and Scooby and Daphne without Fred and Velma, but someone still needs to play the role that Fred and Velma were filling in the original series. So in the same way, I feel like Daphne kind of had the same evolution that Shaggy did, where in the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries, Daphne is kind of the leader now, but Shaggy's the co-leader. And then when we get into the movies like Boo Brothers, now Daphne's gone too, and we have Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy. Shaggy's the leader now, and he is very mature in that role. He does take on the characteristics of, okay, we're all scared, but someone needs to do something. We have to solve the mystery. And so I love how, even though Shaggy does always stay the same, we do get to see between 1969 and then all of those great movies in the 80s, right through 13 Ghosts, we just get to see sort of, I'm not even going to say slightly more grown up Shaggy. We just get to see him fulfilling a role that he was always suited for, but now we're actually getting to see him, like when Fred's not there, Shaggy can take over. Or when Daphne's not there, when Velma's not there, Shaggy is completely competent to do all of the things that everybody else can do. And I love to see him in sort of that like father role almost when the rest of the gang is not there. He's looking out for Scooby, he's looking out for Scrappy. And I don't know, I kind of like later Shaggy, maybe a little bit more than in Where Are You? because I really do. I love Fred and Velma, but there is like a soft spot in my heart for the new Scooby-Doo mysteries where it's Shaggy and Daphne in the leadership role, and then the two dogs are with them too. I like that Shaggy. I like to see that side of him. I think that, if as weird as this is going to sound, I feel like Casey Kasem's voice for Shaggy was really well suited for that more mature Shaggy. I don't know how to explain that, but it's just a feeling that I have, and I feel like that voice suits him even more when he's kind of taking charge of the situation and overcoming his fear without outside assistance or bolstering from any of the rest of the gang. He kind of has to do it on his own, especially in the movies. And I don't know, I think that's an interesting progression for them to have, and I'm glad that they did it though.
Yeah, so Shaggy is much more than just bait. You know, everyone sees him as that, but he really is more than just that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the voice actors, and I'm going to read the list of all of them. So Casey Kasem was the first voice of Shaggy. He voiced him from 1969 to 1997, and then from 2002 to 2009. And a fun fact about that, he originally wanted the role of Fred, and Frank Welker originally wanted the role of Shaggy, but I believe it was the CBS execs that had a different idea and put them in the roles that they got. Jeff Bergman voiced the Cartoon Network bumpers. Tom Kenny voiced the 1996 Burger King commercial. Billy West voiced Shaggy in Zombie Island. Scott Innes voiced Shaggy from 1999 to 2009, and then 2017 to 2020. He does a lot of the video games and the toys. He did the Playmobil shorts, and he does a lot of the stuff for the theme parks. Matthew Lillard played Shaggy in Scooby-Doo and Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. Scott Menville voiced Shaggy for Scooby-Doo, Shaggy and Scooby-Doo Get a Clue. Will Forte voiced Shaggy in Scoob. Ian Armitage voiced young Shaggy in Scoob. And Nick Pilatus played Shaggy in Scooby-Doo The Mystery Begins and Scooby-Doo Curse of the Lake Monster. So do you guys have a favorite voice actor or actor that played Shaggy? Cameron?
So my absolute favorite Shaggy's got to be the original Casey Kasem. It's what I grew up with. I mean, you can't beat Casey Kasem. But I will say though, and I think it's the closest voice to Shaggy. I think Scott Innes would be my second choice, because I feel like Scott's voice is not exactly Casey's, but close up to Casey's. And while I do love Matthew Lillard, I feel like Matthew Lillard, I just feel like it goes Casey Kasem, Scott Innes, and Matthew Lillard. And to me, that's just me, because I feel like, and I've heard interviews with Scott and Matthew, and they have studied Casey's voice so much, and that's what it takes. Now, I'm not saying that these other actors have jumped into the roles, whether it's been voiceovers or actually acting as Shaggy, have not studied, Casey Kasem. But for Matthew and Scott to study Casey Kasem, that just blows me away. That's true dedication to a character, and that's why I commend those two gentlemen. But yeah, to answer your question, Casey Kasem's the original. He's the best in my opinion.
Wendy, how about you? Do you have a favorite voice actor or actor for Shaggy?
Yeah, I also have to go with Casey Kasem. I mean, he is, even when he's doing his own voice, all I hear is Shaggy. Even it's slightly different, yes, but you hear Casey Kasem's voice and you're like, Shaggy, that's Shaggy, over any of the others for me. I do enjoy Matthew Lillard, but I don't find it quite as, it's not as mature. Let's say in like what I said previously about how Casey Kasem's voice was very well suited for more mature Shaggy in the 80s. I feel like Matthew Lillard's Shaggy doesn't have quite that same quality. He's excellent for original. Mature is not really the right word. I don't know what word to use, but I could definitely see Matthew Lillard's voice for Shaggy in classic Where Are You? Less though in the later series where Fred and Velma are not there. But I do love him, and I really appreciate that he seems to love that character. It's not just another role. It's something that seems very meaningful to him. And when you see him doing Shaggy, you know, he was at the Children's Museum recently, and Cam shared some of the videos that the museum was posting, and like he's talking like Shaggy, you know, and as he's going through it. And it's kind of heartwarming because it's almost like he feels like he is Shaggy, and that's good. I feel like that's what helps you sell the character, is that you need to feel it, that you are, that you're not just playing a role, but you are the role. And so I do appreciate him for that. I do really like Nick Palatis, or Pilatus, however you say his name. I really enjoyed his iteration of Shaggy as well. I feel like he did a great job capturing like the innocence of Shaggy. Like Shaggy is just like genuinely a nice guy. That's the vibe that I get off of Shaggy. And I feel like Nick really embodied that in the films where he was playing Shaggy. And so for that, I really love him for that. I didn't mind Billy West. It wasn't my favorite, but I feel like Billy and Scott Menville both kind of had the same thing where, for me, the voice was good, but it sounded like they were trying to imitate Shaggy rather than them just being Shaggy. So again, not that it was bad at all. I mean, I love Scott Menville. He also did Johnny Quest in the 80s revival of that. He was Red Herring in A Pup Named Scooby-Doo. So I love him just as a voice actor. Not my favorite Shaggy. I was actually watching a few episodes. I had actually never watched Shaggy and Scooby-Doo Get a Clue before today. And I thought, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch a couple episodes. And I'm glad that I did, because I do now want to watch the whole series. It is actually, if you can get past your initial shock of the different looking characters, it's actually quite good. I watched a few episodes. And of course, I do really like Scott's, because even more than his Shaggy, guys, can we talk about Scott Innes's Casey Kasem voice? Scott sounds like Casey Kasem. When he is doing a Casey Kasem impersonation, I would be hard pressed. If Scott was doing it on the radio, I'd be hard pressed to know that it wasn't Casey. His Shaggy is very good. His Casey Kasem is even better. It's incredible the first time that I heard him do that. And I was like, wow, that is some expert level voice acting, that you can manage to do that, because Casey's voice is so iconic. It's not like it's something easy to replicate. I feel like when you're doing Shaggy specifically, not that anyone can sound like, not everyone can sound like it, but you can pick up the characteristics of Shaggy, like, yeah, man, like all this kind of stuff. And I feel like almost anyone can sound like Shaggy. But for someone to be able to sound like Casey Kasem sounding like Shaggy, like that to me is just, Scott's on his own level for that, honestly. Like, bravo to him. I love hearing him do Casey Kasem's voice. But yeah, Casey, he is Shaggy for me. He is the original, and I think it was a role that he grew to love, I would like to think, even though it wasn't the one that he initially wanted. I can't really imagine anybody else doing, like, I can't imagine Frank Welker as Shaggy anymore. I can't. And I can't really imagine Casey Kasem as Fred either. I just don't think it would work as well. I think that it was a good call. Maybe not what everybody wanted in the beginning, but things have a way of working themselves out. And I think that we got everything just perfect the way that it needed to be.
Yeah, I agree that Casey Kasem is definitely my favorite. He's all about being wholesome, and we'll talk about that later. But you know that he brought that into the character for Shaggy to be wholesome. That was a big part of who he was. So it's nice to see that he actually cared about the character so much that he wanted to make sure that Shaggy stayed wholesome. And you know, I like Scott Innes's Shaggy. I think his Casey Kasem impression is amazing. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone else that could do Casey Kasem like Scott Innes does. It's really, really good. And Matthew Lillard, I think, was perfect as a live action Shaggy. Could you imagine if they cast somebody else but had someone do like a voiceover for the live action? That'd be weird. Like if they cast somebody else and then had Scott Innes do the voiceover. Or what if they cast Scott Innes as Shaggy because he could do the voice? I mean, he doesn't look like Shaggy. It just wouldn't work. But I think that they definitely made a great choice with Matthew Lillard casting him in the movies. I think Nick Pilatus was really good in the other movies. Yeah. I mean, I can't really complain about anybody that's voiced Shaggy. I think everybody has done a decent job for the role that they had. You know, Scott Menville in Get a Clue, the art style in that show is a little bit different than what we're used to. Like you said, you had to get over the shock. It was kind of a shock to see it, but I think his voice matched the art style. So I think it worked. Joel, what are your thoughts on the voice actors and actors?
Yeah, I 100% agree with everyone, and I'm totally team Casey Kasem. But big shoes to fill, right? And everyone's done a great job. What I liked about Casey was just his subtle nuances when he had like this waver in his voice when he's nervous, and you could feel that unease, that he was really uncomfortable. And I love that. But then when he was trying to fool a monster, he was just super confident and he just threw himself in that role. And I thought that was fantastic. One thing I also wanted to just bring up, and I can't find the YouTube clip, but I remember watching like David Letterman in 1994, let's say, and Kevin Bacon wanted to be Shaggy, and he did a really good Shaggy impersonation. It was really cool. He was much younger back then, but yeah, Matthew Lillard for the movie though was just fantastic, and perfect role for him too. But yeah, that's all I really have to say with the voice work. Otherwise, I'd just be repeating everyone.
Danny, what are your thoughts on the voice actors?
Obviously a topic very close to my heart, considering I'm a voice actor and a voice director, and like that's my day job. So for me, Casey is definitely my favorite. Just he's an icon of itself, right? So that's like really special. But like going from like a voiceover industry kind of view, cartoon characters don't sound like real people. They have a different style. And I think when Casey got Shaggy's voice, it was both. Like, it's a very distinct voice. It's a very him voice. So he was comfortable. So you got the realism while still having that distinct character voice. And I think that's part of the reason why people notice a voice change for Shaggy like so easily. It's because like, if you're trying to copy Casey Kasem's voice, you're not going to, because nobody can sound exactly like somebody. It's like, it's impossible. We have different vocal cords, everything like that, right? So that's why, like, I think that kind of voice change can be jarring, which is why I actually like really appreciate Matthew Lillard, not only because he was the perfect live action Shaggy, but also he was less concerned, I think, with being a complete match as Casey as he was being a match for Shaggy. So he got, okay, this is the realm of what Shaggy is and what Casey was, and now I will also add Matthew to it. And that's like such an important thing, because then as you go, it's you in there, and it's a lot more believable. And again, you have the character voice and you have the real person voice working together. So while it might be a little bit farther than somebody else's Shaggy, it's still encompassing that character, caring about that character, and you hear that in the voice and you hear that in the performance. Like, you can hear when somebody cares. I say that like all the time when I'm directing people. I'm like, I don't think you cared. did you care? And then they're like, oh, you're right. And they'll do it again. And when they care, you can hear it. And it's like, you might not have a trained ear, but you will notice it. You can notice when somebody's being genuine. So while Casey, like, that's the Shaggy I fell in love with, and Casey Kasem is amazing. Matthew is like easily a second, and I love that it's Shaggy and him, and great acting.
And you know, I think for Matthew Lillard too, he didn't have to sound like Casey Kasem because it was live action, it wasn't animated, so he could make the voice different. He didn't have to try to be exact. So we are going to talk about Shaggy's family. So we have his parents who look different every time we see them in each different series. Maggie is his sister, who went by Shuggy in a pup named Scooby-Doo. Wilfred is his brother-in-law. Shaggy Rogers is his uncle. Uncle Shagworthy is his rich uncle. Great Uncle Nat is his great uncle. Then there's great-great-great-grandfather Shaggy the First, who we only saw a picture of him, but in the picture he wore a medallion and it turned him into a werewolf. And then Scooby was like, oh, so yeah. Uncle Beauregard, Fearless Shaggerford is his uncle. Uncle Albert Shackelford. McBaggy Rogers was a Pilgrim ancestor. Betty Lou Shagbilly was his southern cousin. Nathaniel was his great-grandfather, whose portrait we saw in the Loch Ness Mess. Benjamin was his great-great-grandfather. Matilda was his great-great-grandmother. These were portraits that were all in the Loch Ness Mess. Tawny Rogers was his western cousin who appeared in Shaggy's Showdown. And Jack Rogers was an ancestor of Shaggy's who was also in Shaggy's Showdown. Grammy Rogers was Shaggy's grandma in Be Cool Scooby-Doo, who lived at Shady Sunshine Retirement Village. And then there were a bunch of family members in comic books. So there was Salty Rogers, his uncle who was a fisherman. Stetson Rogers was a cousin who owned a dude ranch. Henry Rogers was his grand uncle and was an archaeologist. Uncle Olaf owned a hotel. Uncle Shug ran a construction company. Uncle Shuggy owned a surf shop. Uncle Zudi was a poet. Jameson P. Willikers was his cousin that owned a farm. Betsy was Jameson's wife. Great-grandpa Willikers was Jameson's great-grandpa. They say that they're not sure if it was a relation to Shaggy, but I would think because they both had the same last name that it would have been. Because if it was the mother's, then he probably would have had a different last name than Willikers. There was Jenny and two sons of Jameson P. Willikers. And then there was Rudolph I Gotcha, who was a distant cousin of Shaggy's, and he was a vampire. So, what does everybody think about all of Shaggy's family? Wendy?
Okay. So the vampire cousin, I had the comic book. This was my very first Scooby-Doo comic book. And I had forgotten all about that. But I mean, look at him. Look at him. He is amazing. Okay. That is just, that's probably part of the reason that I'm such a vampire fanatic as well, is this comic book and that story. My favorite of Shaggy's relatives, though, has got to be Uncle Shagworthy in Scared a Lot in Camelot. He looks just like Shaggy. He's got some of Shaggy's mannerisms. He loves to eat. I love him. I love the idea that he keeps his jewels in an ice bucket in the refrigerator, you know, where all of the treasures that Shaggy has in the fridge, all of his food. But also, can we just appreciate the names? Like, one of the best things about Scooby-Doo is like their fun puns or the alliterate titles. They're just, I don't know, I love it so much because I feel like that kind of stuff gets a bad rap sometimes, but I feel like you have to be pretty clever in order to come up with some of that stuff. That's not easy to do and to like get it. So Shagworthy, Shagaford, McBaggy, Shagbilly. I mean, all of those things, I love them. I love them. Like, whatever ridiculous name you can come up with that has like the shag sounding or the E or whatever. I love it. I love it. Shuggy is really cute in a pup named Scooby-Doo. She's a little bit annoying. I don't know why, but hearing a baby say, like you, it makes me kind of angry, like just mildly angry. So take that for what it's worth. Sorry. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I love that there's so many, and that because we're not really dwelling on the gang's family members ever, I just love that you can have you can just throw them out there and you can have such a huge list, and it adds a lot of character to Shaggy, because even just in a name alone, you can tell something about that character and you immediately relate it back to Shaggy, and it just builds him as a character. And yeah, I don't know, it's just, man, they were just like so spot on with Scooby-Doo when they were making that show. Like, guys, what the heck? There's never gonna be another Scooby-Doo like ever. Like, and I'm talking like Shaggy, like ever, man, like ever. There's just never.
Oh goodness.
Joel, what are your thoughts on Shaggy's family?
I'm a big fan of Uncle Shagworthy. He's got that mustache and he dresses all ritzy, has a monocle, and like, even though he's like dressed as like an aristocrat, he kind of looks like a magician because he's got a weird kind of suit on. But I loved Uncle Nathaniel, great Uncle Nathaniel as well, from the Loch Ness Mess. Both these uncles, they have these, well, one lives in a castle, one lives in like a Boston manor, and they live alone. They're not married, I take it, and they're just happy. They're just doing what they do, whether that's, I don't know what they're doing in there. One builds a bridge, big wooden bridge, so he must have some money, and he's got all the, like, he's held on. He obviously loves his family. He's got all these books on, with pictures of Shaggy when he's young and Scooby's as he's young. And then there's that Uncle Fearless. We never see him. We just hear his voice. He seems like the meaner uncle. He's always yelling. But yeah, my favorite two, Uncle Nathaniel and Uncle Shagworthy.
I love that so many of them look almost identical to Shaggy. I love that. Like, that's the best thing about his family members, is that they all look so much like him. Danny, what are your thoughts on Shaggy's family?
I love how it's like hard, like normal person name or shagified name. Like Jack, Shagworthy. You're like, okay, there's a thing going on. We got to figure out where the normal people are and kind of shoo them away. But I love Gaggy 100%. Like, that laugh is like so good. We see him for such a short period of time, but in that moment you're like, I like this dude. Like, and Whoopsie, like, together just have such the same Shaggy and Scooby energy while being their own characters that I'm like, okay, I'm picking up what you guys are putting down. It's just, they're so cute together.
Cam, what are your thoughts on Shaggy's family?
I thought it was a lot of fun seeing like his family members over the years. I love what DANII said in the very beginning. His family, for a pup named Scooby-Doo, they're very wholesome. I agree 100% they are. But you guys, let's not forget that Casey Kasem voiced his father in Mystery Incorporated. And I love that so much because, when he's talking to, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't like how they designed the mom and dad, because his dad is like this and his mom's like all the way up here. So it was so awkward. But I do love how Casey Kasem and Matthew Lillard, their voices like interacted. I thought that was just so cool. I kind of agree with Joe and Wendy how Uncle Shagworthy, and you know that he's popular among the franchise because they just put him in that new multiverses game as for Shaggy, like you can play him, and Daniel Ross voices Uncle Shagworthy, and he does an amazing job with the voice. But just no matter over the years, I loved them all. I also thought it was so funny how in Be Cool Scooby-Doo, his grandmother looked just like him. Like it was so funny. Like they're going to the nursing home, and I'm just watching the episode, and I'm just like, "Oh, Shaggy," and I'm like, "Oh my god, it looks like." I mean, it's so funny how they do it spot on. And I'm like, "Oh wow, I never realized that till now." But I agree. The funny names, how the families. That's one thing I will say I've always enjoyed about watching Scooby-Doo. You know, whether it's a series or one of the movies or a comic book or a video game, like you always see a family member, and I've always loved it. I always thought it was a lot of fun.
So let's talk about Shaggy's love interests. So we have Sadie Mae Scroggins, who had a crush on Shaggy and wanted to marry him, but Shaggy did not return her affection. That was in Scooby-Doo Meets the Boo Brothers. And Googie was Shaggy's girlfriend in Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf. Rachel was Shaggy's ex-girlfriend in What's New Scooby-Doo. Meadow was Shaggy's old friend, who maybe they had a thing, who knows? Crystal was the hippie girl that Shaggy liked in Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders, but she turned out to be an alien. Mary Jane was Shaggy's love interest in the live action movie. Madeline Dinkley, Velma's little sister, she had a crush on Shaggy in Abracadabra Doo. And Velma, we know that they had a very weird relationship in Mystery Incorporated, and she wanted to change everything about him. They also had a little thing in Curse of the Lake Monster. So Danny, what are your thoughts on Shaggy's relationships?
In general, I'm like, I'm good with the group of friends that are a group of friends, to be honest. So I'm never like, I need romance or I'll cry or whatever. I don't know what people do when they ship people. But I would say there's more relationships I dislike than like. No thank you on the Vilma.
Yeah.
Especially. But if it's like choose one, Googie. 100%. I love Googie, and I love that she likes Shaggy. Like for Shaggy, she worries about him, she fusses over him, but there's even one part where she's mad at him and then she's like, but I like him for him, and you're like, that's so friggin' sweet. She gets attacked by monsters for him. Like it's wholesome and it's good. She's really cute. So like I say that all the time. I'm like, if we have to choose one, bring back Googie. Do not mess around. I also feel like she'd just join in on the gang. Clearly she'd be like good to go with all of that. So yeah, either leave it alone or make it Googie, and I'm out after that.
Cameron, what are your thoughts on Shaggy's relationships?
Now, I will say, this is the one thing, and I am blessed about me and Wendy, that I live thousands of miles away where she can't come kick my butt for saying this answer. But I loved Amber and Shaggy. Or, I'm sorry, is it Crystal or Crystal? Yeah, I'm sorry. Amber's a dog.
Okay, see, your opinion is invalid. You don't even know the difference between eight. Now, I could have. Okay, honestly,
I got 10 million things on my mind. Listen, I don't take notes. This is how I take notes. Okay.
Yeah, we could totally ship Amber and Shaggy as
oh my
his
god,
dog.
no, we're not doing
That's
this.
okay.
Oh, okay. I was like, whoa, where's this going on?
My bad, folks. My bad. I meant Crystal. But I like Shaggy and Crystal. I thought they were a good pair together. I mean, I know, spoiler alert, and if you haven't watched it, well, you need to go watch it. But in the end, you know, Crystal turns out to be an alien. But I do like how that song, How Groovy, and Shaggy, it just kind of showed like they're little kids, and like Scooby had and Amber had the puppies. I don't know, like that was always so cute to me. I just liked it. You know, one thing I will agree with what Danny said is I've always just loved the group of friends that go solve mysteries. I'm not a hardcore romance person. If I was to have two romances in Scooby-Doo, it's Fred and Daphne. That's the only romance I think I could get really behind. I don't think anybody liked it. I didn't like how they really try to put Shaggy and Velma together and Mystery Incorporated. And some people may disagree with me on this. If they would have went a different route with Shaggy and Velma, maybe it could have worked. Now, I know a lot of people will maybe disagree with me on that, but I felt like in Mystery Incorporated, you shoved them together so hard that it was like shoving it down our throat. And for us fans, I didn't appreciate it because they made Velma where she was trying to correct Shaggy and trying to wedge in between him and Scooby. Didn't like that one bit. Like every time he said like she made him snap a rubber band, and then like, you know, it was like such a toxic relationship. So I didn't like that. I did like Rachel, and I always thought like, and because, you know, like in the Scooby-Doo Valentine, I just thought it was such a funny little romance between the two. Like they hate each other in the beginning, and then like they're at the jail cell, and she's like, "Oh, what the heck? I miss you, Shaggy." So I always thought that was just one of the funniest little things. But yeah, I mean, like I said, you know, no matter where it's been or where he's gone or what they've done, you know, when he has had a love interest, you know, he's always been there for Scooby. Now has there been some conflicting, like Mystery Incorporated in the live action, where sometimes the girl maybe tries to come before Scooby, but Shaggy always, you know, knows that his relationship with Scooby is the most important thing to him. So I think that whether it's been a cartoon or a movie, or excuse me, the show or the movie or even the live action, I think the producers have done that so they can show, hey, even if someone else tries to come into Shaggy's life, Shaggy always prioritizes his relationship with Scooby-Doo, and that they're best friends. So I think that's very important. So that's how I kind of feel on the relationships. And one more thing, I just have to say this because it is bothering the heck out of me. I did not deface the Shaggy statue behind me. It was in a Warner Brothers store, and like kids and parents would put their face in it and like take pictures with it. So please don't think I defaced this statue. That is bothering the crap out of me.
I will only accept it if you go behind it and put your face there. That's the only way. Otherwise, you deface it.
Joel, what are your thoughts on Shaggy's relationships?
I'm not against the poor guy meeting up with someone, but I think the only one that I liked was Googie. That was my favorite of the bunch. And Cam brought up an interesting point with the Velma. If they did handle it different, I might have liked it. I can't stand that toxic relationship they had. I've been reading and why they did it that way to give her that certain arc, and sure, that's cool too, but I think they could have done it in a way that made her come across better. And I haven't honestly liked Velma since. It's really left a bad taste in my mouth with her. The Velma I loved was, where we last saw her, was probably like Zombie Island, when she had that little bookstore. That was like an adorable Velma for me. But yeah, Googie, I liked. I would like to see her come back and maybe start something up with Shaggy again, maybe. I don't know, if they do it well.
Wendy, what are your thoughts on Shaggy's relationships?
I too liked Googie. I mean, okay, that's a really strong way of putting it. Maybe I better not say it quite like that. I liked him with Googie the best. My thing with Googie, number one, I wish that they wouldn't have given her quite the voice that they did. Like, I get it, they were trying to do a bit of a match for Shaggy, and I normally would appreciate that, but that was part of why I didn't like Crystal, is they forced that, the way that she was talking. So Googie is definitely not on that level, but I like Googie as a character. My other problem with Googie, though, was that I feel like Shaggy was kind of indifferent to her, and she was really into him, and that kind of bugged me. I was like, you know, this girl really likes you, and you must like her because you're dating, but he just seemed like there was not a lot of like reciprocating the feelings, and that kind of was like a little bit uncomfortable for me, because I felt like she was always there for him, and it's not that he didn't appreciate it, but I didn't get like the dating vibe from him. I got it from her, but I didn't get it from him. And so that I kind of feel like maybe she would have just been like a really cool side character that it might have even been DANII that mentioned this on a previous panel. Like, just have her as like a side character that comes and like solves mysteries with the gang, and there doesn't have to be any romance to it. She's just like a really awesome character. Clearly everyone knows my feelings on Crystal. I don't think we need to rehash that. I don't like it. I really disliked with Velma in Mystery Incorporated. However, I really like those 2 Cartoon Network live action movies. And in the one, they did attempt a Shaggy Velma pairing. I didn't hate it because it was mutual. And they treated it as mutual. Now, part of that whole storyline, unfortunately, if I'm remembering it correctly, was there was like a crystal or something that was screwing up like their minds and things. So she was acting not the way that she would have been acting. And I get it. That was for the story. And they had no intention of actually pairing up Shaggy and Velma. So like, I get that. But in the moments where it was real, I didn't mind it. Like, generally speaking, do I want to see them paired up just because Fred and Daphne are sometimes a thing and there's 4 people, so they're the other couple, we might as well pair them up? That's nonsense. I don't think you need to do that at all. I don't really think it adds anything to the story. But I appreciated how they treated it in that live action movie, and I didn't hate it. It was mutual. They wanted to try it. It didn't work out, and that was fine. But toxic is the only word for what they did in Mystery Incorporated, and I think that was actually a very detrimental thing to put in a children's show, because at the end of the day, Scooby is still for children. And I think that really, because they don't really condemn it very much. I think because they were just so hell bent on turning Velma into some kind of, I don't know, feminist activist. I don't know what they were trying to do with her. I think it backfired because, like Joel, I have not liked Velma since. So I just kind of have to ignore, like, pretty much after A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, I just ignore all of Velma. Zombie Island, she was okay. Witch's Ghost was cool. I enjoyed her arc too with Ben Ravencroft, but pairing her with Shaggy, not necessary. Just because there's 2 guys and 2 girls doesn't mean that they have to pair up at all. You know, let's just normalize friendship. Maybe it doesn't always have to go beyond that. Like, it's totally fine to just have friends. Like, even Fred and Daphne, sometimes I don't mind it being hinted at, but I don't want to see it like the main focus in my Scooby-Doo show. Like, definitely not. Because it's just, let's normalize having friends of the opposite sex, that it doesn't have to go further than that. You know what I mean? Like, let's just do that. It's totally fine. But yeah, Crystal, just no. Stay, whatever planet you're on, Crystal, if you can hear me, stay there.
Hey, Wendy, we don't want to fight tonight, okay?
I didn't mind Crystal. She didn't annoy me like she did you. I'm not big on relationships though within the gang. The Velma Shaggy relationship really bothered me. And you know, Cam said maybe if they did it better and not made it toxic, it would have worked. But just the way that they were together, it just did not work. And yeah, Wendy, it shouldn't have been in a kid's cartoon. Why do kids need to be subjected to that? You know? So we're going to talk about some controversy revolving around Shaggy, so to speak. And the first thing we're going to talk about is Casey Kasem refusing to voice Shaggy unless Shaggy was a vegetarian. So Joel found an article in Vegetarian Times from August of 1988. And the article really shed a lot of light on Casey Kasem as a person. I will definitely put the link in the description of the video because you should check it out. It's a great article about him. In the article, they talked about how he became a vegetarian at the age of 12 after his uncle took him to a slaughterhouse. And they talked about what he witnessed, which is very graphic. So if you need to fast forward this a little, you can. But I just want you to know, warning, it's graphic. He witnessed a steer get hit in the head with a sledgehammer, have its throat cut while it was alive. And also while it was alive, the steer was hoisted up and its stomach was slit. So he stopped eating meat, but that only lasted a few months because he said he was influenced by radio and television ads that told consumers that meat tastes good and it was good to eat. In 1973, Casey Kasem stopped eating meat again for good because he believed that there was a connection to cancer and eating meat. And then in 1986, he stopped eating dairy products and eggs. So what are your thoughts on him not voicing Shaggy because he wanted Shaggy to be a vegetarian? Pam?
While I do love Casey Kasem very much, I kind of find it ridiculous, to be honest with y'all. As far as him not, for the Burger King commercial, everybody talks about the Burger King commercial because, they were going through and getting a burger. Shaggy and Scooby have eaten meat. We've seen them have a steak. We've seen them have a burger. We've seen them have, pepperoni on their pepperoni pizza, and so now they're going to have a Burger King commercial. And then he just, if Shaggy's not a vegetarian in that commercial, I'm not, and it's kind of like, why? I mean, why do you got to put your beliefs into a cartoon character? You know what I mean? And that's how I kind of looked at it. And like I said, I do respect him in a certain degree of, you got to stand up for what you believe in. I'm a Christian man. And if I was doing something and something wasn't very Christian-like, I'd say, hey, look, I'm not very comfortable with this, but again, it's not like he was going through, Burger King. It was like, give me, he was just like, hey, I want 2 burgers, 2 fries. That's all he was saying, and then Casey it really upset him. And you also have to think too, guys, maybe Casey was going through an emotional time of his life. There's been some times in Casey that we have read that, there's been some sad moments in people that are famous, they're just like us. And while I look at them as legends, they go through things, they see things. Casey went to the slaughterhouse, like Nikki just said, and he witnessed something gruesome. And I hate that for him. Back then that's how they used to slaughter cattle. Now they have a way more humane way of putting down animals for human consumption. But like I said, I don't feel like it was very well to just to write off him voicing Shaggy in a Burger King commercial, just because, but like I said, that's him, that's what he believed. So but like I said, if I was voicing a character and let's just say I was a vegetarian and that happened, I'd still be like, hey, I've voiced him so long, I feel like, I am Shaggy. I want to voice him no matter what, but Casey had differing opinions. Yeah, that's just how I kind of viewed it as, just keep on going with it, dude. Don't let that one little thing stop you. But he was gung-ho about it. So but like I said, I wasn't there. You never know what's at play. We could sit here and talk about it all day long, but again, you never know what was going on during his day or what was going through his mind. So
I used to feel the same way until I read this article. And one of the things that he had said in the article was, or the person that wrote it said, Casey's conscience keeps him from doing voiceovers for commercials for cigarettes, alcoholic beverages, and fast food chains. He feels a great sense of responsibility to do good. So after reading this article, I kind of feel like he did what was in his best interest. And if that meant not voicing Shaggy, then, if he doesn't believe in something, then he shouldn't do it. So if he's forcing himself to voice Shaggy, even though what he's doing, he doesn't believe in, it's almost like you just feel so awful about yourself. Like if you're forced to do something you don't want to do, you just feel really bad about it. So after reading this article and really hearing his thoughts, it just, I can agree that, you know, I think for him, he probably made the best decision, the decision that he could live with as a person and feel good about himself. And yeah, it definitely changed the way that I look at this. Wendy, what are your thoughts on him not voicing Shaggy?
Like you, reading the article has changed some things for me. To be honest, I personally don't agree with a lot of what he believed, but that's irrelevant because I am my own person and he was his own person. And when, you know, I was raised to look at everything through the filter of how would you want to be treated, treat other people the way that you want to be treated. And so after reading the article and seeing just how ingrained his beliefs were in him, I mean, to the point that, like, this is my opinion, a lot of people don't agree with this. To me, religion is simply whatever you believe and hold divine and put into practice. So if you're an atheist, in my opinion, you have religion. That atheism is your religion, the same as Christianity is my religion. People who worship money, you have a religion. And Casey, from reading this article, he was way more into the idea of not eating animals than what I realized. This was not some fad for him or something about weight loss, or, you know what I mean? Like, this was a huge part of his integrity in his mind. It was like a religion for him based on what I read in the article. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that this is the realization that I had today. So, while for someone like me who thinks that if we all stopped eating meat, there are 7 billion people on this planet, and I'm sorry, but a huge portion of the planet, including where I live, we can only grow plants like 3 or 4 months of the year. People would starve if we weren't eating animals, in my opinion. So I don't share his opinion, but if I look at it from this point of view of, if I was voicing a character and suddenly they were like, okay, now your character is a Satanist, I would be like, absolutely not, I'm done. There would be no discussion. I would be done. So if I look at his belief as his religion and my belief as my religion, and I make that exact comparison, I can completely understand why he made the choice that he did. And I would be a huge hypocrite if I said that I wasn't going to respect that or that I didn't respect that. He clearly felt very, very strongly about what he believed. And for that reason, whether I agree with it or not is completely irrelevant. He did what he felt he needed to do. And I commend him for that, because I don't think that people should compromise themselves. And again, I'm only seeing this from my own point of view and the things that would make me uncomfortable and that I would absolutely say no to. I have to be willing to give that same leeway to everybody else for whatever their belief is, even if it's not my belief. So I urge people to read that article, definitely, and apply the golden rule. How would you feel if someone treated you a certain way, and that's how you need to treat other people, the way that you want to be treated? And so for that reason, I no longer have a problem. I mean, it's unfortunate. I wish that it hadn't have been that way, because he was Shaggy. And I feel like even though we've already discussed that the people that came after him have done a very good job of carrying on Shaggy's legacy and Casey's legacy, I kind of would have preferred Casey to just be with it the whole time, you know? But now I understand why he couldn't do that. And I cannot fault him for it without being a hypocrite. So God bless him. He thought that what he was doing was for the betterment of people. And Nikki mentioned that portion in the article where he specified about cigarettes and alcohol. And I think that that is something that we can all also, like, we could get behind that, you know, that is something that, you know, you don't want to be promoting that to children. And anyone who, you know, I feel like where I would maybe, now I'm not going to go back on anything that I've said, but I mean, I wish that everyone could get behind the idea of like everything in moderation. So even if, like, I don't know how far, like, it sounded like he took his activism quite far. If he took it as far as to tell people not to be doing something, I might be like, well, okay, it's okay if you don't feel comfortable eating the meat, but maybe don't be pushing that on to everybody, you know. But I don't know that he did that. I was not old enough to know what his role in activism was at the time. I am not saying that. I am just hypothesizing that, you know, but even that is irrelevant to him having to do what was right for him in here. And if his conscience was bothering him enough that he felt like he really needed to stop voicing a character that he in essence created, then it just is what it is. And bless him for sticking to his conviction. A lot of people can't do that. A lot of people are very wishy-washy. And so I respect him for having a belief and sticking to it to that degree. I can't fault him anymore for it, even though it disappoints me that we didn't get to see him do a lot of other things that I would have liked. He did what he needed to do. And so I can't say anything bad about it.
One of the things that the article said was that he made sure, like on American Top 40, that he did not talk about his beliefs, that he didn't bring any of that into the show. So I'm not sure how much he would have pushed it on people.
Yeah, good point. Good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Danny, what are your thoughts on Casey Kasem not voicing Shaggy?
The situation was always weird for me because it was such a non-issue for anybody but him, because he had the risk. He took the hit. He didn't get the job, and he put everything at risk for what he believed in. So, like, he lost the money, he lost the job. People were mad at him because they were like, "Oh, you took Shaggy away from me." It was sad for us, sure, but it wasn't what it was to him. It wasn't as big as of a thing. Like, I don't know, I guess just on maybe understanding the industry or just like paying attention to things, like it's not going to be the same people forever. Stuff happens to people. So like if somebody is like, wow, this like really hurts my soul, so I have to stop, I'm going to be like, okay, totally valid. I'm going to be a little bit sad about it, but like, you are a human being who matters too. So totally fine with me. And I always found it like, so especially because it was like a Burger King commercial and people are like, he didn't do the Burger King. I'm like, I don't even like Burger King, man. I don't blame him for being like, I draw the line at Burger King, because like, whoa, you know, like it just always, I was so surprised when people were like essentially mad at him. And I feel like it's because it was specifically veganism and everything, because a lot of people have given that a really bad word because of shaming, but he did not. He drew a line for himself. That line hurt himself almost exclusively. Us being a little bit sad is, you know, it's a bummer, but like not as big as it would be to him. So to me, I was like, that's okay, man, I got you. If you want to come back, oh, come on back. I support you anytime. But that one is okay. I'll be okay with one Burger King commercial or whatever, you know?
I feel like sometimes we feel like they owe it to us to do their job, regardless of what the circumstances are. And I mean, in reality, they don't owe us anything. They're people, they have thoughts and feelings, and it's okay for them to do something or not do something because they don't believe in it. And as fans, we have to respect that because it is their choice. I mean, you wouldn't be happy if you were forced to do something that you didn't want to do. So we shouldn't feel like they owe us anything and force them to do something that they don't want to do. You know, so like Cam said, celebrities are people. They hurt just like we do. They're happy just like we are. They're people. So we tend to forget that, I think. Joel, what are your thoughts on Casey Kasem not voicing Shaggy?
Everyone has just made so many fantastic points. And the way I kind of view it is he did lose income, but I think he gained more in legacy, whether that's positive or negative, who knows? But here we are so many years later talking about that pivotal point. And you know, Casey's probably up in heaven smiling that we're just talking about this and discussing it. And you know, I can't really say anything more on the subject, but I wonder if this is an open question, not to really you who I'm talking to now, but anyone watching, like, did anyone see Casey Kasem as a role model for vegetarianism, or did anyone stop eating meat? That'd just be interesting to know. I don't know if it was successful or not. I personally don't see Shaggy as a vegetarian because I grew up with the classic, you know, he's eating turkey with the bones in it. And when you read interviews with Casey Kasem, he's like, oh, just pretend that was all made of tofu. But I don't see a tofu turkey ever being made like that, or a ham with a bone in it being made out of tofu. But yeah, that's all I can really add to the conversation. Everyone's made amazing points. I'm really blown away.
I'm not sure how much he advocated for not eating meats or to whom. So yeah, that would be an interesting thing to get an answer to. And of course, when there's controversy around Shaggy, we all know we have to talk about him. Is he a stoner? After reading the article, I mean, with the stuff that Casey Kasem said, I don't think he would have voiced Shaggy if Shaggy was a stoner. If that's the way that they took his Shaggy as a character, if he wouldn't voice him because he wanted him to be a vegetarian, he's certainly not going to voice him if he's smoking marijuana. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Joel, what are your thoughts on Shaggy being a stoner?
So my history with that, I first became aware of that in 1992, got the internet. First thing I did was look up Scooby-Doo. You didn't go to websites back then, you went to servers. And then I downloaded this file on Scooby-Doo, and it just turned out to be like a joke about Shaggy and Scooby being stoners. And I might have laughed at it and just moved on with my life. And then more and more people started talking about it when they knew I was a Scooby-Doo fan. And then I think it really hit its height in probably, when was it? That Fun Loving Criminals, they had that song Scooby Snacks. And then Kevin Smith came out with that Jay and Silent Bob movie where they have a gag where smoke's coming out of the mystery machine. And that's when it really, I noticed, hit it in popular culture. And then Mary Jane as his girlfriend in the live action movie 2002. But I think it's run its course. I don't know if stoner culture is as a big deal anymore. Like, I don't see it really in popular media like I did way back when. And I hope it just kind of just disappears, but I've never considered Shaggy a stoner. And I don't think 99% of people, probably more than that, ever did at all either.
DANII, what are your thoughts on Shaggy being a stoner?
I mean, at the base of it, like, it's a kid's show and we never see him do it. So no, he's not. But like, in general, like, people are like, well, there's so many arguments for it. It's like, it's just an overplayed joke. Like, it's not, you're not giving me a zinger, you know? Like, I've heard it, I've been there, I don't care. Like, I don't know how many people have met somebody who weed is a personality trait for them, but even that person is kind of like, okay, you stay over there. Like, it's not what you want a character to be. That's not a character trait that you want for your character. So to me, whenever I hear it, I'm like, haha, yeah, you know, he's okay, all right, bye now. Like, I would rather have a serious conversation about how much more Shaggy is of a character than you thinking he's a stoner because he wants snacks and he says like. And some people are like, he's chill, and I'm like, is he chill? He's fucking terrified most of the time. You know, like, he's not totally, he's not I vibe with anything kind of guy. You know, he's not like doing slow giggles, his eyes aren't red, like, you know. So I'm like, I don't know, like, he's kind of hippie style, but so are all of them. So I don't know where you draw the line. Seems weird to me.
Cameron, what are your thoughts on Shaggy being a stoner?
I honestly hate it so much. I hate that people came up with it. It's a kid's cartoon, bottom line. You know, everybody's like, well, you know, he's really hungry all the time. He's a teenage boy. I was a teenage boy once, and I would clean my kitchen out. Mom would come back from Walmart, and I would completely destroy the kitchen with food and snacks because I'm a growing boy. You know, in all their iterations, they've always been teenagers, you know, and he's always been hungry. You know, Hanna-Barbera, you know, they created Scooby-Doo to be wholesome and clean. And never once did I ever, as a kid growing up, think, oh, Shaggy's a stoner because he loves to eat. You know, I'll be honest with y'all. I've heard it so much around me. Like when I like, because you know, whenever I'm with friends or wherever I go, people are like, "Oh, he loves Scooby-Doo," because you know I'll be wearing a Scooby-Doo shirt, or you can talk about Scooby-Doo if it's listening to a conversation. They're like, "Oh yeah," and they'll always bring up Shaggy's a stoner. They absolutely hate Scrappy and they want him to die. Like, okay, he's a cartoon character. I mean, really? And then Fred's having sex with Daphne. I've always heard those three things, and honestly, it's just so. It's so stupid at this point. I think it's just, it's not funny. It's not cute. I don't think I've always thought Scooby-Doo is wholesome and clean. Another thing too is a lot of people love putting Shaggy on like bongs and merchandise lately. And it's like, I mean, I remember walking into Spencer's, which I don't like that store very much. I just don't like going in there. But anyways, I remember when the Spencer's at the mall, because I was walking by, it caught my eye that there was a Scooby-Doo backpack in there. Well, I went inside, and I remember I was looking at the backpack, and this lady was like, "Oh, you know, here's some Scooby-Doo shirts." And I looked at them, and I was like, "No, I don't think I'm going to buy those." And she's like, "Oh, well, why not? If you love this backpack and this blanket and some other stuff I was buying." I was like, "No, it looks like they're smoking on there." And I said, "That's just not my Shaggy." And she's like, "Oh, well, you know, Shaggy's a stoner." And I'm like, "No." So, you know, I'm kind of like not really like fighting with this lady, but I'm like, and so my mom's like, "Okay, enough, Cameron, like drop it." And I'm like, "Well, but Mom," and she's like, "Look what store you're standing in." I'm like, "Oh, that's a good point." So I just like checked out, got out of the store. But the point is though, is that they're trying to put it on, you know, merchandise. They're trying to do this. I just think it was a running joke. You know, Scott Ennis has even said, "No, I don't view Shaggy as a stoner." Casey Kasem doesn't view, you know, the creators of Shaggy, you know, and Scooby-Doo don't even view him as a stoner. It's just a rumor that came up. Does somebody think it was funny? Somebody thought it was cute. I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's cute. You know, keep my Scooby-Doo clean. That's what I always say. And they've done a good job of keeping them clean. But, you know, there's always going to be those people out there that, you know, just always have to, you know, make us, you know, pardon my, you know, I'm Southern, so they always have to make that smart ass joke, you know, and I just can't stand it. You know, it's run its course. It's like Joel said, and I loved it. I hope one day it just goes away, you know, that they just completely forget about it. And I know this is a panel about Shaggy, but I hope they drop the hate for Scrappy too, while we're a little bit on the conversation. So that's me. I think it's ridiculous.
Wendy, what are your thoughts on Shaggy being a stoner?
Yeah, it's ridiculous and it's offensive. It really is. There is absolutely nothing about Hanna-Barbera that would ever give anyone the impression that that was the case. Joe Barbera was not that kind of a person. He would have never in a bazillion years created a character or allowed a character to be created for that purpose. I'm not going to speak to the authenticity of this quote because I did not have time to fact check it, and I normally would never go to Wikipedia for any kind of information, but I was reading the Shaggy Wikipedia page today, and supposedly Joe Ruby and Ken Spears have said that they never intended for Shaggy to be a stoner or into drugs, and that they, quote, took umbrage at all of those drug jokes in the live action film. So, I mean, between them, Casey himself, all of the people that were there and worked on the show from the beginning, because I'm sorry, you do not have a right to take something that someone else created and start acting like it's your own and make changes and then think that you can like retroactively apply your changes to how it started. Excuse me, you need to have a little bit of respect for the creators and what they intended. If you want something different, you make your own bloody character. You do not think that you can go around changing somebody else's. And I think that's what's happened to Shaggy, is somebody, the live action movies didn't do anybody any favors as far as how we look at these characters, and Shaggy in particular. And I get it. It's just, it's funny. It's a joke. Ha ha ha. Yeah, well, jokes sometimes backfire and they turn into something bigger. And I'm sorry, but drug use is one of those things that you don't promote to children. And maybe when they made the live action films, they weren't directed at children, but they stole a children's property and did something to it. That does not change the integrity of the property. And people need to realize that, okay? You need to go back to the beginning to see if what you say has any merit. And I think even just in what we started talking about tonight has already helped to get rid of that idea. Shaggy eats a lot. Yeah, Shaggy's super active. DANII nailed it on the head. Shaggy is not chill. Shaggy is the opposite of that kind of drug use. You know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of surprised that no one, and I shouldn't even put this out into the universe, but I'm surprised that they haven't gone like a different drug route for Shaggy, because he's so wired all the time. He's terrified. He's running around. He's lost his mind. You know what I mean? And it's offensive. It's offensive to the character. It's offensive to the show. It's offensive to the creators, who we have said it a bazillion times, and we're going to say it a bazillion more. Scooby is a wholesome show for children. Knock it off. Knock it off. If you want to have this other crap, make your own show, have your crap, and take it over there. Okay? Keep it away from our cartoon. Just keep it away.
It makes sense that Shaggy would always be hungry if he's a gymnast and he ran track. I mean, he's always like running or doing some crazy stuff. And I have teenage boys, like they eat a lot. Teenage boys eat a lot. So the final thing that we're going to talk about is Shaggy and Scooby's relationship. And I mean, we all know that they're best friends, and the worst things that have ever been done in Scooby history is to mess with that relationship, like they did in Scoob. And they tried to do it in Mystery Inc. You cannot break them up. Like, Shaggy and Scooby go together, and they need to stay together, and they need to be friends. DANII, what are your thoughts on Scooby and Shaggy's relationship?
I think, as I always say, one of the things that makes me love Scooby-Doo as much as I do is how real it is. And like, what is more real than a boy and his dog, you know, like that kind of thing that they always talk about. And I remember seeing Scooby-Doo Goes Hollywood and having Shaggy like be mean to Scooby. And I was like, tiny little child who's like, not okay. I hate this movie. I don't like this movie. Shaggy's being mean. Weird. Shaggy's being mean to Scooby. So not okay. So much crying. I don't watch that movie. But like, just like their interaction is just so good, and like they complement each other so well. They're so, again, distinct as characters and distinct as themselves, and they're similar, but they both have stuff that's different about them that makes them special and everything. I like the times where they poke fun at stuff, like in Be Cool Scooby-Doo, when Shaggy's like, I'm a responsible dog owner, and Scooby's like, you know, like that kind of stuff where they're just really having fun with it is like so good, because they end that, spoilers I guess, they end that with Scooby being like, you're my human, and Shaggy's like, what? Just like, it's just that interaction that's so good that, you know, it is a dude and a dog, but they are best friends and they're meant to be together and they're meant to be buds, and it's just wholesome. I love it so much.
Wendy, what are your thoughts on Shaggy and Scooby's relationship?
It is kind of the quintessential best friend, like what you strive for. And I get really angry when people kind of try and say that that's not realistic. You know, friends fight and friends this and friends that. But you know what? When you find your best friend, you actually don't do those things. Okay. I have had a best friend. Next year, it will be 30 years that we have been best friends. We have been best friends longer than a lot of marriages last. Okay. And in those 30 years, I can legitimately think of only 2 times where there was even like a hint of friction. And that's all it was, based on like a misunderstanding and a miscommunication. It wasn't even a thing. That's it. Okay, we don't have all the same likes. There are plenty of things that we don't like all of the same things. We have a lot of things in common, but not everything. And there's no one that I trust more. There's no one that I want to spend more time with. And it kind of is like Shaggy and Scooby, where it's just, you just click. You click. And you click when you're together and you want to be together. And that is something that is attainable. Is it something that everyone finds? Unfortunately, no. But my God, when you do, you will do anything to maintain that relationship. And Scooby and Shaggy are the ultimate at that. I mean, look at the stuff that they go through. Look at the stuff that they're willing to do for each other when they're in trouble or when they're scared or whatever. And I don't know. Name a more classic best friend duo. You really can't. Like, you can't. And I love how they bridged having a best friend with, like Danny said, the boy and his dog, and they merged it. And I think it's that merging of these 2 incredible and special things, bringing them together into one, that makes Scooby-Doo have the longevity that it does and make it so beloved to so many fans. It really is the Shaggy and Scooby duo. There is no Scooby without Shaggy. There is no Shaggy without Scooby. Any of those iterations of that show without one or the other, it doesn't work. I don't want to watch a show that's just Scooby-Doo. I don't, because it's the Scooby Shaggy dynamic. They keep each other in line. You know, when they're both terrified, sometimes I think that the only way that they're able to get over the being scared to get the job done is that one of them is bolstering the other. Scooby, you can do it. Shaggy, you can do it. We have to do this. And it's always better when you have support. It's so much easier to do things that are hard when you have that support. And Scooby and Shaggy are always that support for each other in classic Scooby-Doo. Anytime that they started hinting at moving away from that in the more modern iterations, like, I hate it. Completely unnecessary. We don't need that kind of drama in Scooby. We don't need drama in the gang. We don't need drama between Scooby and Shaggy. The drama comes from the bad guy versus the good guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Today, I feel like that doesn't exist anymore in television, and it's a shame, and it makes it hard to watch anything. It's why half the time I will try and watch something that's new, and it's so depressing, guys, that I'm like, screw it. I will just watch an episode of old Scooby-Doo. Because I'm going to feel great when it's done. I'm not going to feel bad. I don't have to feel bad while I'm watching it. I don't have to feel bad when it's over. And I just want to keep more and more and more. Like, I don't even need anything new. And if they keep going the way that they're going with what they want to do to it, like, stop. For me, just stop. I don't want, just leave them alone. Leave them alone. Shaggy and Scooby are perfect the way that they are. And we need to maintain that relationship with them. It is the heart and soul of the show. No one member of the gang is the heart and soul of Scooby-Doo. It's the duo of Shaggy and Scooby. They are the soul of that show. They are the reason that that show works. They are the reason that we are still talking about that show all these years later. It's how they survived all of the different iterations, even my beloved Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy shorts. It's how it survived because it was still Shaggy and Scooby at its core. Even when you peeled everything else away, when you took away the mystery in some of them, when you took away the rest of the gang, it was still Shaggy and Scooby. There, you don't need the rest of it. The rest of it is just gravy, you know? It's just extra and it's wonderful. I'm not saying that it's not, but they are the heart and soul of that show. They're the reason that it's still around. And I think everyone should strive to have a friendship like Shaggy and Scooby-Doo. And I promise you, when you find the right person, you can. You really, really can. And it is as special as what it appears to be on the show. It really is. So God bless the two of them for always sticking together through thick and thin. Like we just love them, and we love them together.
Joel, what are your thoughts on Scooby and Shaggy's relationship?
I also hate the rift too, and I just do not get why the writers or creators just do what they did back then. They'd have someone fall through a trap door to separate them. Why do they have to fight? Why doesn't Freddy just go, let's split up? That's how you separate them. We don't need this drama. But what I love about the relationship is how Shaggy treats Scooby like an equal. Like they're always back, sitting in the mystery machine, like at the back, sliding around as Freddy rides over puddles. And I always get a smile on my face. And that's why I love Scooby-Doo. Like thousands of shows can make you laugh, but very few shows can actually make you smile. And I always smile when, gets me every time when Shaggy gets distracted while eating, and then Scooby gets in and just like mouths everything down, and then Shaggy just looks at it going, did I eat that? Where did it go? Makes me laugh and smile every time. And yeah, they just, if you have a pet, like a pet dog, they will take a bullet for you, and you will take a bullet for your pet dog. There's just an unbreakable bond, and I just love that dynamic between them.
Cameron, what are your thoughts on Shaggy and Scooby's relationship?
I mean, they are the best of friends. They've been lifelong friends. They go together like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, it's just perfect. You know, I think my favorite parts of Shaggy and Scooby is telling their backstories. Like in the Loch Ness Mess back in the new Scooby-Doo movies, how it shows like the baby pictures of them together. I love how in Scooby-Doo Goes Hollywood, the adoption scene where, you know, Shaggy's at the pet store. That's really cute. And then in Scoob, you know, when Shaggy puts his collar on Scoob, and you know, he lick, you know, Scooby-Doo licks Shaggy, and just and you know, they hug, and it just shows the friendship between them. Like y'all, I don't like the riffs, but you know, it's for some reason they feel like that's necessary to put that in there. Like you said, I'm a plain Jane guy. I like it when it's just, you know, them solving mysteries, having fun, and you know, Joel said something great. Scooby-Doo makes me smile. And it's the truth. It just makes my days go easier knowing that, you know, Scooby-Doo has always been there for me. And some people may say, oh, good Lord, that's silly to say. Well, it's not, because that cartoon dog has always been there for me since I was a baby and since I was a little one. And so to know that Shaggy and Scooby are lifelong friends, and you know what, I'm very blessed to say that I have a best friend in my life, you know, kind of like what Wendy was saying. I love what Wendy was saying. I met my best friend in college. We are still best friends. We have never once had a fight, and yet our friendship is going on 8 years now, but we've never once had a fight because there's nothing to be fighting about. We always get along. And we've been together like we've been together so much, you know, in college and so much in life. And when she had to move away, it was hard, but yet we still keep in touch. You know, I feel like nowadays people throw around friends very loosely. I can count friends on my fingers and still have fingers left over. I have a lot, and people are like, oh, Cameron, you've always had a lot of friends in life. I've always heard that. And I'm like, no, I've had a lot of acquaintances, but I have true friends in my life that I know that I can call no matter where I am in the world, and they'll drop what they're doing and help me. You know, that's a true friend. Shaggy's always been that for Scooby, you know, no matter what. And I don't know why, but ever since I was a kid, I've always loved that run that Shaggy does, you know, where he's been over with his back and he's moving his arms like this, and Scooby's, you know, I just always loved that. Always loved the catchphrase Zoinks. I always loved how Scooby said rut-row. I love that iconic pose they have where Scooby jumps in Shaggy's arms. It's iconic. And rap songs, country songs, whatever kind of music. In movies and TV shows, you always hear them mention Scooby-Doo and Shaggy's friendship. You know what I mean? And so it's beautiful, and I just like, and you know, I love how they go together. I love how they're always there for each other. I always love how they know what the right thing to do is, and I think that's why it's been the best cartoon, in my opinion, for kids, because no matter what, Shaggy and Scooby in the beginning, it's like they can take the easy way out, but then as they're taking the easy way out, they stop and remind the kid or remind whoever's watching the show that they got to work together to do what's right, because in the end, that's what they are. You know, that's what Mystery Inc. is. They're a force for good, you know? And so that relationship between Shaggy and Scooby has just, it's, you know, it's so iconic. It's so lovable. There's nothing that you can change about it. It's like I said in the very beginning of this panel, you can't just take a show and make it about Shaggy. You can't just take a show and make it about Scooby and not have the two together. That's going to be really weird. You know, you know, we talked about, well, us not liking the riffs. I don't like the riffs, you know, and they've done it in Mystery Incorporated. They've done it in Scoob. They've done it in some other iterations as well. And it just doesn't work. You know, you look at, and also think about this. You think about Scooby-Doo started back in 1969, you know, and for over 50 years, we've seen that they have been through everything together. And no matter what series or show or movie or comic book or game or whatever, Shaggy's been right there with Scooby. And I love that the voice actors, the actors, how they always get along, because they know that that bond between Shaggy and Scooby is relevant. You know what I mean? And so they're able to work together knowing that that maintains friendship. That's a cartoon. You know what I mean? And it's, and don't get me wrong, there's been Batman and Robin or Ash and Pikachu or, you know, Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, but they'll never, no cartoon out there. And yes, I'm counting Snoopy with Charlie Brown. There will never be a cartoon that has two friends like Shaggy and Scooby. In my opinion, there will never be a cartoon that'll match up to Shaggy and Scooby, because it's just so special and it's so lovable.
Insert Scooby and me here.
They do have a really great relationship. And I think it's really great for kids to see that, because, you know, kids are very impressionable. And if all they see is negativity, they're going to be negative. So it's good to see that Shaggy and Scooby can work together and be best friends, and they rely on each other and they joke around together and they just have a great time. And I think it's a really good positive impact that it can have on kids. Does anybody have any final thoughts that they want to share about Shaggy? Joel?
No, I've got nothing. I've been thinking this whole time, and yeah, I got nothing else to add.
DANII?
No, just Shaggy will always be my favorite character. But there's no ignoring the compliment he is to Scooby or Scooby is to him.
Cameron?
I think I'm good. I think I just love how we talked about Shaggy today and talked about the friendship that him and Scooby have, and how I pray that, you know, they're going to keep on going for another 50 years and their friendship keeps on going, because it'll never die. So.
Wendy, any final thoughts on Shaggy?
Yeah, there was one thing that I meant to mention earlier, and Cam mentioned how in Mystery Incorporated, Casey did Shaggy's dad's voice, right? But we didn't talk about the fact that Casey also does the voice of Dr. Albert Shackelford in Shaggy and Scooby Get a Clue.
Right.
The other weird thing about that series, if I'm not mistaken, like I say, I've only just started watching it today, but isn't Shaggy the only character that doesn't have his usual voice? Like Scott Menville is doing it, but Frank Welker is doing Fred and Scooby, and Gray is doing Daphne, and I think it was it Mindy that was doing Velma at that time? I'm not sure, but anyway, whoever was doing it at that time. And I'm wondering, is this like why Casey was on the show as a regular, but not as Shaggy? Was that to do with the Shaggy not being a vegetarian thing? Or like, I don't know. I was just kind of confused as to what actually happened there. Does anybody know how that worked out?
It could be availability, to be honest. It could be that simple. Like, while he was like a main character, he's not majority of an episode character, so recording's way smaller. So if he was doing other things, maybe they were like, oh, okay, well, at least we'll get you in there.
Yeah, that's
You
good.
also have to think too, back in 2010s when Mystery Incorporated started, you know, Casey had a lot of health problems, you know, so it could have just been where he maybe just, you know, did Shaggy's dad, and maybe that's all. Because, you know, we don't see Shaggy's dad a lot. We just see him for, you know, just a couple episodes out of the whole series. But you know, you make some great points though. I mean, I've always been curious about that too. As far as, you know, because, you know, look at Frank Welker, you know, he's an older man, you know, and he still continues to go with it. But that's the only thing I can think about with Casey, maybe not continue going. Maybe it was something to do with him being a vegetarian and his beliefs. But I truly believe that because, you know, he had a lot of health problems in the end, and it was honestly one of the most tragic endings, you know, for him and his story. I mean, my goodness, like I said, they're humans, so that's the only thing I can think of, to be honest with you. So
Yeah. Well, I think we can all maybe collectively agree that while Shaggy as a whole has been wonderful all of these years, I hope that Shaggy's legacy is Casey. I hope that in another 50 years that is the first association that people make with the character of Shaggy. I hope that it's Casey Kasem, because no matter what happened, Casey was Shaggy. And others have borrowed the role, but I think that Casey was born to play that role, and I think he played it better than anyone ever could. And I hope that we can remember him for giving us such an iconic character. I like to think maybe Casey and Don Messick are in heaven doing their Scooby and Shaggy routine for all of the people. Like, isn't that just like a nice, I don't know, I think that's like a nice thought, that maybe they're, you know, Raggy, rah, 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 you know what I mean? I don't know, just I love to think about things like that, and I hope that that's happening, because they're together again, and I hope that they're doing their shtick for somebody up there. I hope so.
All right, well, let us know how you feel about Shaggy and any of the topics that we covered today. We're going to wrap this up, but before we do, I'll have everybody let you know where you can find them on social media. Wendy, we'll start with you.
On Instagram, I'm at Wendy Bridge. Twitter is at Wendy Loves Jesus, and my blog is wendylovesjesus.wordpress.com.
Joel?
You can find me on the YouTubes if you just Google or YouTube Planet Scooby.
DANII?
You can find me on everything, Instagram, Twitter, do a bunch on TikTok at Masquerades Fox.
Cameron?
you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I just now joined TikTok, and you can find me at Scooby and Cam.
And you can find all my links on ScoobyAddicts.com. Thank you so much for joining us for another Scooby panel.
Thank you for tuning in to another Scooby panel. I'm Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com. If you like these panels, please subscribe to my channel for more great discussions. A huge shout out to our patrons, Julie Rosen, Ross from ScoobyFan.net, Scooby-Doo of Roblox, and Ruth Elliott Hillsden. If you would like to support the Scooby panel, please go to patreon.com/ScoobyAddicts. A very special thank you to Joel from Planet Scooby, Guinness record holder DANII MEGER, artist, blogger, and Scooby collector Wendy BRYDGE, and Cameron Bates from Scooby-Doo and Cameron Too. Scooby Panel is available in podcast form on most podcast platforms, or as a web series on YouTube. Scooby and Shaggy were voiced by Scott Innes. Check out Scott's website, onescottshop.com. Scooby Addicts artwork by Will Davenport. Video editing by Nikki Blake. Music composed and performed by Bovine Nightmares. Please join us next time for another Scooby panel.